What is going on, everybody? Grady here for another video, and today we're going to be taking a look at this. This is my Casio AE-1200WH, also called the Casio Royale. And last week we talked about my Tudor Black Bay 58, which is my most valuable watch in my collection. So I thought for this week, let's jump to the other side of the spectrum, take a look at my most affordable one, and see what it's all about. Let's jump right into it. As always, let's take a look at some dimensions. First things first, 40 millimeters for the case width, a lug-to-lug effective here of 45 millimeters, case thickness of 13, lug width of 18 millimeters, a tapered bracelet from 24 down to 17 with a signed Casio clasp. It does feature a stainless steel case back, but ultimately a full resin case with a plastic crystal here, and as you can see, an LCD display. So why did I end up with this watch? Because I find myself mostly with steel retro style sports watches, and when I was thinking about purchasing a watch like this, I really came down to one sort of idea or one philosophy, is that I wanted to be less careful. Really, I tend to take really good care of a lot of my watches. They do get scratches on them, because I do use them, but I wanted something that when I put it on, I really don't care what happens. And I did own briefly one of the Casios, or the Casio G-Shock GA-1200s, and that was a really cool watch. I definitely thought it was a neat design and everything. However, it just didn't feel right. I purchased this watch before I went on my honeymoon with my wife, and when we were out in Florida. There, we were swimming, going to theme parks, we were going all over the place, and this thing just was absolutely beat up. If you look at the bracelet here, it looks like there's speckles over here. This is all from cooking one day and grease getting on it and staining the resin. And I thought, you know what? Could I just replace it? Absolutely. These watches are really around $30 or so, nothing too special. But I thought, man, what a cool bit of a story. It's got scratches and dings from when I was out in the ocean and just being able to explore and have fun with this. It's just a watch that you can put on and really enjoy. When you're looking at the screen itself here, you're going to find the day, the date, and the time here, counting with the seconds. And one of my favorites here is up in the top right hand side is a small map, and that corresponds with the time zones that you are in. We are in the New York time zone because I'm here in Michigan, but if you are to jump across the world, you can select that and you'll see the highlighted portions actually shift across the world, which I've always found to be really interesting. Also, to having an analog style, in a way, tied to a digital screen is just so fun. There's nothing about this watch that really takes itself too seriously, but ultimately it just works really well. But even with things like the resin case, you can see here where they have it sandwiched between you, looks like the two pieces as it comes through in the mold. It actually creates a little bit of light reflection. Even though this is just one chunk of plastic, it actually looks visually interesting, especially with things like the tapering bracelet. As you can see here, as it comes down, it actually looks very cool. Putting the watch on wrist, I've got a 7.25-inch wrist, and for me, one of the things that I found to be really cool about it here is that the way it fits, the way it sits on wrist is actually very cool. Here, taking a look, being very flat against the wrist, very comfortable. This watch is extremely lightweight, being completely made out of resin. And yes, I'm wearing a suit, nothing, not really what this is particularly designed for, but I would argue it's sleek, it's comfortable. I think although it isn't a digital watch, it's not ugly in any capacity, and which is so fun because a watch like this is just not something that you find every day, where it can be affordable but also good looking. Looking at the rest of this bracelet, I love things like these signed clasp. Casio did not have to do this. On this watch that costs $30, having a little plastic clasp signed with the Casio brand is incredibly cool. Having a 10-year battery, another great feature of this. I ultimately would have this watch for a decade, and I don't know if I would replace it. I think I would just buy a new one because these watches have not changed at all in years. So the fact that they make this and you can just buy another one in a decade, I've always found to be really interesting. But I would argue for a watch like this and what it represents in the watch world, I really just don't foresee anything that compares. Yes, there are other digital watches. You think about the Timex and the Ironmans, even Casio's own sort of Casio style watches that they do. And, those are impressive. There's no question about it. But for what this represents, the price that you're paying, for if something goes wrong, you just go get another one. It's handsome, it looks cool, and it's incredibly packed with features. I mean, having that world time, having the ability to actually, and like I said, being able to see things like the map here, the analog dial, having alarms, having that 10-year battery, I really just don't find anything on this watch that I can nag about. Not saying every watch is perfect, of course. I would say, would it be really fun if Casio took this design and made a higher quality version? I think that'd be kind of fun. I understand that Casio has always focused itself on being affordable, which is why the aftermarket does a very good job of providing things like metal cases, sapphire glass, and all kinds of fun options to build these watches into whatever you want them to be. But would it be cool to have that in the factory? Absolutely. Looking at things here, like the illuminated dial here, and I'll turn my light off here for a second so you guys can see it. I love that old school glow. It just looks very, very cool. It's just something that takes you back in time a little bit. Watches nowadays being so focused on being a luxury item for people, this is just something that's back to basics. I have a collection with watches worth 10 times the amount, 100 times the amount, and it's just, I still find myself wearing this. I'm using it when I'm working on the yard, or I'm doing something with my hands where if it gets banged up against something, I'm not going to be too worried about it. It looks good, it feels good, it's functional, it's accurate, it's well made, and it's from a brand that many of us know and love. But otherwise, it's a fantastic watch. I've got no complaints over it. So let's wrap up the video. Alrighty, well, that is a wrap here on the Casio AE-1200. Thank you so much for checking out the video. Really happy to share this with you guys, and I hope each and every one of you have a great rest of your day. And hey, stay awesome.